a pullback on Bitcoin from, mid 60s to, now into the 37,000 per Bitcoin. Do you think this is the end of the beginning of the end?
It's the beginning of the beginning. David Rubenstein was on CNBC today, and David Rubenstein, for those of you guys don't know, was a co-founder of Carlyle Group. More blue chip and blue blooded you cannot get, and very connected in Washington. And he said it best, where he said, effectively, the people want this, and the government will have no choice except to support it, because you can't take something like this with this much institutional and retail demand away. So we have to go to the place where now crypto needs to be like everything else. And maybe the crypto stands get upset with that because they don't like it that, a bunch of their parents are all of a sudden going to be buying tokens and stuff, but they got to get over it. And this stuff should be, transacted in the same way you transact anything else. You buy it, you sell it, you get a tax return, you pay your taxes, and you move on.
What they don't want you to know about Bitcoin. In this video, Chamath Palihapitiya discusses the recent Bitcoin price action and explains why this is still just the beginning of the beginning for the cryptocurrency. Investors are scared that due to increased taxation and regulation, Bitcoin could be shut down or made obsolete. Chamath speaks on if a government could even centralize or regulate Bitcoin at this point, and what potential black swan events could take down Bitcoin, and what power governments really have against BTC. Also, only a tiny percentage of my viewers are actually subscribed. If you enjoy crypto content, consider subscribing. It's free and you can always change your mind. Enjoy the video.
Well, no, I think the issue, practically speaking, in this would be that you would see those resources getting organized, meaning you'd see silicon being bought in volume by some centralized player, and then you'd have to see water and power come together as well. And this is where I think it's just not realistic, where today that I think the horse has left the barn, because if you try to basically capture enough hash rate to kind of like overpower this network, it's like the scene in Austin Powers where he's screaming in front of a steamroller, but the steamroller is moving at like 1 foot a minute.
Right. You see it coming.
It's just like, you just see it coming.
Well, would you have a black swan, Friedberg? You asked a loaded question, so do you have one?
I think about it a lot. It's a black swan. It's because it's a black swan. So you don't really see it coming. But like, the thing about Bitcoin, which has always given me pause, is the fact that the only way it works is if everyone believes that more people are going to believe in it tomorrow than believe in it today.
Well, that's the only way it appreciates.
Yeah, but for a variety of reasons, it's also the only way that it works, because if it starts to depreciate, it becomes almost like this unwinding circumstance. And there are moments where it unwinds, but then people kind of say, well, you know what? More people are going to get on this. There's the Chinese argument. There's the Argentinian argument. There's all the reasons why people will try and store wealth in this system. And that becomes a rationale for continuing to bet on it. And my observation is so many people that are active in Bitcoin compare Bitcoin to the price of the dollar, which to me seems like it doesn't make sense relative to the intention of Bitcoin, which is to not be part of the monetary system that uses the dollar as kind of the de facto, system of value. And so why have the comparison to the dollar as the objective for Bitcoin? Why is the objective not transactions, use cases, number of people that are active on the network, et cetera, et cetera?
Yeah, nobody buying it is buying it as a substitute for dollars. They're buying it as a lottery ticket.
So yeah, that's right. And so then it becomes this rationale that it's like it's an investment that you put money in the form of dollars or your local currency, with the intention that you will be able to get more of your local currency out at some point in the future. And the only way that works is if you expect someone else will buy it from you at a higher price in the future. Therefore, it's all about propagating the marketing around the Bitcoin. Whereas if your objective was really about making this become a replacement currency system or replacement monetary system, you would ultimately care less about, what's the dollar value per coin, and you would care more about how many people are using it, how active.
Let me build on that question
then.
Own it, so Sachs or Chamath, if this CBDC and Americans' currency starts to move towards a Bitcoin blockchain-like experience, what would America start to look like if 10 or 20% of your dollars instead of being held in a bank, we're on a blockchain with an American.
A government-backed blockchain doesn't accomplish anything.
It's still
that
centralized.
It's centralized. And not only is it centralized, but also it's still prone to debasement. Right?
Yeah.
And so, look, human beings have used everything from gold coins to seashells as money. We can make anything money that's easy to transact if we all agree on it. That's the sense in which Bitcoin is the bubble that becomes true if everyone believes in it.
That's
provided the number of Bitcoins stay at 21 million and that the technology enforces the scarcity. The problem we have with the US dollar is the government can just print as many of them as they want.
Yeah, you change the denominator problem.
And so I think there's a positive black swan as well, positive for Bitcoin, which is Stanley Druckenmiller thinks in the next 15 years, the US dollar will no longer be the world's reserve currency. Well, what's going to replace it? The positive black swan would be that Bitcoin becomes, if not a world reserve currency, an unofficial world reserve currency. Why? Because people trust it. They trust the decentralization more than they trust any government. And that would be a big flip.
Is the United States and China, are they going to let Bitcoin become the world's reserve currency?
Well, it's not a choice that they have.
You sure?
So, yeah. There's nothing they can do.
What about the law and guns and jail and tax?
I don't know what that means. There's nothing that they could there was nothing that they could do to stop it before. There's nothing that they can do to stop it now.
Well, you can't get the New York Times in China, and you can't practice religion there. So they have a pretty easy system. They put you in jail. They want to stop Bitcoin. They could just put you in jail.
How?
By finding out that you have Bitcoin. And
How?
Because they have 100% view into the internet there. They have
How?
Because they have routers. That's how they capture all the Uyghurs, is they know their location because they have mobile phones. And when they use Signal or any other encrypted technology, they catch them.
No, I don't think that's how it works. But
that's how they catch all the dissidents there, is they have them. And they also have Apple's entire data center is controlled by the Chinese government.
There's no ledger somewhere that says this specific wallet address equals David Sachs. And there's not going to be one anytime soon. And so you'll have these centralized wallet authorities that actually, have a lot of account information. But the reality is the sophisticated actors, use tumblers. They wash sort of like their paths in a way where it's very difficult to figure out who these people are. Now, if you use a site that doesn't have KYC, that's always going to be the case. And, people with huge amounts of Bitcoin are sophisticated enough to know how to stay anonymous if they want to. For everybody else who doesn't care, because for them it's sort of an investment asset class and a hedge, then they're not going to care either. And the point is, when enough people own it, governments aren't in a position. The track record of them just waking up one day and pulling the plug on anything is zero. That's not how people do things. You have to have centralized policy and support. And I don't see it one way or the other. Of all the things that China and the United States will face over the next 30 or 40 years, this is 50th on the list.